Hi guys, we are here together with Patrick Elliott. He's live from Yerevan in Armenia. Hey Patrick, good to have you today.
Hey, yeah, I wish we were meeting under different circumstances, but thanks for having me again.
So let's jump into the topic. For sure, we're talking about the situation in Armenia and in Azerbaijan, or to be more precisely, in Nagorno-Karabakh, or how you call it, Artsakh. Correct? Is it correct?
Yeah, Artsakh.
So what's the update? What's the current situation? I mean, the situation is changing every minute, I would guess,
Yeah.
but what's the current state of situation?
Yeah, it's completely crazy. To give context, essentially, I'll try not to go too broad, but I'll try to keep it as concise as possible. Essentially, Armenia, in its democratization trajectory, has understood finally that Russia is not a reliable partner. It wasn't even before that. There was just this illusion going on, right? So there's this dichotomy amongst Armenian society of like, look, if Russia abandons us, we have no one to defend us against Turkey and Azerbaijan, who are very, very sincerely existential threats to our existence. And so this hammer being held over Armenia's head has been lingering for a really long time, and it's prevented Armenia from actively seeking other partners. Now that kind of illusion has been shattered, and we are finding new partners. I mean, we are partnering up with India. The French have just sent their new military attaché to the embassy, which means it signals the expanding of cooperation. There are several other countries who are not yet publicly saying so, but Armenia has been expanding quite proactively its security partners in the last year, since September 2022, and all of this is related to Karabakh. And so essentially what Russia is trying to do now, since it has a foothold in Karabakh, is to create a humanitarian disaster, allow for ethnic cleansing just in broad daylight, and hopefully have the refugee crisis that comes over, and of course all the horrors that are being televised right in this day and age, to create this shock effect in Armenia that would destabilize the democratically elected government and pave the way for a pro-Russia candidate to move in place. So they've unleashed a full-on assault on tiny Artsakh, essentially. With the Azerbaijan has done this, totally in cahoots with Russia. There are confirmed reports that the Russian peacekeepers gave the exact locations of ammunition dumps, artillery stations, and other heavy equipment. So those were targeted all of yesterday, pretty much obliterated. And now the Azeris are advancing into villages and towns, and there's already reports of them summarily executing civilians. So I'm terrified of checking the news of what I'm going to find next, but I'm not surprised at this point. We've seen what these people are capable of for the last couple of years. So, yeah.
So would you call it like a planned coup between Russia and Azerbaijan in a way, or they made a deal?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I don't want to get lost too much in the weeds, and I'm not an expert, but from what I've understood, what seems to be likely is that it's due to Russia's let's say shifting priorities, right? Especially with all the sanctions and so on. So Russia, China, and Turkey are the main players here. What they're aiming for is to create a corridor in southern Armenia, what the Azeris are referring to as a Zangezur corridor. This is through the province of Syunik of Armenia. Zangezur is the old, it's an Armenian name, despite what the Azeris will tell you, but it's another Armenian name. It's just for the southern province of Armenia. And what everyone stands to gain is Azerbaijan would get access to its exclave of Nakhichevan, which is currently split between, there's Armenia between the two. The Turks would get unfettered access to Azerbaijan, use it as a springboard into Central Asia, and therefore expand economically outward into what they perceive as the Turkic world, which would be their natural sphere of influence. It's debatable if the Kazakhs or the Uzbeks really want that, but that's their ambition. And the road would be protected by Russian FSB agents. And the Russia stands to gain by this because they gain leverage over Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey, over all the trade that's passing through there, and onward to China. Right, so Baku is a major port on China's Belt and Road Initiative. So you have essentially authoritarian dictatorships, right? Turkey being the #1 jailer of journalists on the European continent, Russia, which I don't even need to tell you about, Azerbaijan, which scored 1 rank higher, just 1 point higher than Taliban-run Afghanistan on the Freedom Index. These countries are essentially for lack of a better term, vultures circling around Armenia, which is trying to democratize, reform, rebuild, re-strengthen, and provide, the basic rights to life, liberty, and property to its citizens. So it is quite a dire situation. I would say that the silver lining is that the United States and the European Union have taken a much more active role lately. However, due to the nature of the conflict, Karabakh being internationally recognized as part of Azerbaijan, there's many arguments for why that shouldn't be the case or doesn't need to be the case. And hell, they're giving us the argument for remedial secession right now, where people can't live under a genocidal country. But regardless, internationally, based on international law, unfortunately, the American primarily, but also the European Union attitude is, well, there's nothing that we can do. It's really more of a Russia problem because there's Russian peacekeepers there. We can help Armenia. We can guarantee Armenia's security, but there's nothing we can do about Azerbaijan. So that's given, a green light for, for the Aliyev regime to commit nothing short of genocide. We're watching effectively a second Armenian genocide. I want to say I don't use this word lightly. I don't use the word. I have refrained over the last 8 months from saying genocide, but there's no other term for it. Even Luis Ocampo, the former chief prosecutor at the International Criminal Court, publicly and clearly called it a genocide. The Lemkin Institute called it genocide. I mean, there's no other word. We're watching genocide. We're watching Srebrenica happen again on Europe's doorstep.
So let's talk about a little bit about the difference to tell it to the public. What's the difference between Armenia and Azerbaijan? Just to come up, for example, with some statistics of freedom index or some stuff like that.
Yeah, it's actually quite simple. This is one of these situations where there is a tendency, and I need to point out, Azerbaijan has spent the last 20 years lobbying extensively, using their oil wealth to funnel money. We're talking to the tune of billions of dollars to sitting MEPs, organizations, journalists, even UNESCO. They issued a $400,000 bribe. This has been covered extensively. You'll have to forgive me for the term. It's the Organization of Cooperation of Europe or something. There was a damning report about the Aliyev family and their tentacles throughout Europe. If you remember, a couple of years ago, there was that anti-corruption journalist who was murdered in Malta. They found links to the Aliyev family behind this. I mean, they've done a lot of work to paint the picture of Armenia as essentially the satellite state of Russia, and this just being another one of these former Soviet Union frozen conflicts like Donbass, Crimea, Transnistria, Abkhazia, and Ossetia. Whereas up until 2020, actually, it's not true. This is, I don't want to get too much into the history because there's a lot of debate on that. But this was the indigenous populace who's been living unbroken in this place for the last essentially 4,000 years. I mean, the Armenians are the indigenous inhabitants. And they've been oppressed by the Azeris before the Soviet times. They've been oppressed during Soviet times, and as the Soviet Union was collapsing, they fought for independence. Was there horrors done on both sides? Absolutely, these wars are ugly. There's no doubt about that. But until 2018, we could have looked at it and said, look, these are two authoritarian regimes fighting over a piece of dirt. But that dynamic shifted dramatically in 2018 when Armenia had what they called the Velvet Revolution, where they peacefully toppled the Russian-installed and Russian-controlled oligarchy, and they've been reforming ever since. So today, Armenia is number one. It's the fastest-growing economy in all of Eurasia. It's got like a 13% growth year on year. It is now the least corrupt ex-Soviet country, on par with Moldova, and the only ex-Soviet countries that are ranking above it are the Baltic states, which are part of the European Union. Armenia is less corrupt than Ukraine is today. Right. And that's not to disparage all the work that Ukraine has done for its independence. But I'm showing that if we're going to give Ukraine the hope that they can one day join, I don't even want to call it the European community. I would call it the community of normal states. Then Armenia should be extended the same. It's now number 14th on the planet in terms of ease of doing business. It is ranking higher and higher every single year, going up on the Freedom Index. Every year, it's just getting better and better. The one thing that's been dragging, unfortunately, this country back has been this conflict with Azerbaijan. Now, on the flip side, Azerbaijan's a petro dictatorship. It is a medieval kingdom run by a single family. It's the North Korea of the Caucasus. As I said, it ranks 1 point higher than Taliban-run Afghanistan. Afghanistan got 2 out of 100. Azerbaijan's at 3 out of 100 on the 2022 Freedom Index. The name of the president, the last name is Aliyev. The one before that is Aliyev. The one before that is Aliyev. The one before that is Aliyev, going back 30 years. It's the only country on earth where the president is, excuse my French, but fucking the vice president. The president essentially installed his wife as the vice president of the country, and his father was the leader beforehand. And they used to have these posters on their highways with the father and the current president, and then the young son, who's now disappeared because there's rumors that he's autistic or mentally challenged. But they used to have posters saying the past, the present, the future. It's a hereditary monarchy. It's a parody of a state. It's tragic because they have weapons pointed at a democratic country. But there are rare cases in geopolitics when there's a clear right or wrong. There's a fascist genocidal state that is now assaulting a free people. It's to me, it's a very simple state. If you believe that anyone has a right to freedom, you can't, there's no justification. We had Yerevan mayoral elections last Sunday, and you know what the Azeris were tweeting on Azeri Twitter? That, like them or not, Armenians get to choose who's the mayor of their capital. We get some government appointed guy. We choose our leaders in this country. We're a free people. We criticize our leaders in this country, and we're going to stay that way.
So let's talk about a little bit about all of this propaganda. I think that's also a huge issue in Armenia. Let's talk about the Russian propaganda in general. Yeah. What can you tell us about that?
I think it's actually quite interesting. So recent polls show that something like 68% of Armenians get their news in Russian. Now, they're very likely not getting it from Medusa, right? They're unfortunately getting it from Sputnik, Russia Today, TASS, and so on. That said, though, here's the interesting part. Most recent polling, as usual, Azerbaijan is ranked as the #1 biggest threat to Armenia. #2 is Turkey, but for the first time ever, #3 is Russia. In the mayoral elections last Sunday, like I told you, the former regime-run party, which is basically the Russian proxies. So despite all of the propaganda, despite billions of dollars pumped into Armenia to create some pro-Russian image, they gathered 25% of the vote. 25,000 votes. 25,000, not 25%. 25,000. I mean, it's irrelevant. So I will give credit where it's due to the Armenian peoples, that despite being within that Russian orbit, it's part of the culture that they don't, oftentimes, like they don't recognize it. But even there, no one's blind anymore. It's become pretty apparent, and you're hearing more and more calls to officially leave the CSTO, which is the Alibaba version of NATO, the bullshit Russian cheap Chinese knockoff of a NATO. There's calls to shut down the base in Gyumri. There's calls to nationalize Gazprom, Rostelecom, and all the other Russian assets that have been sold by our former regime geniuses, all the critical infrastructure that belongs to Russia. But look, all this aside, there are very genuine and very real offers being made. I can't get too much into the details, but there are alternatives being offered to us by our Western partners. I think that no matter what happens in the coming days with the situation in Artsakh, that the decoupling will be complete from Russia. I don't think there's coming back from this. I mean, the Russians, a friend of mine said something, he's also a journalist, but he said something that's amazing. He said that Russia has created one of the most incredible feats of foreign policy we've ever seen in history. They took a population that otherwise had no ill will towards them, and within 6 months made them into an enemy state. It's all they're doing. So, they gave us, it's like
they've done it before. They've done it before with other countries.
Yeah, but it's the Ronald Reagan, right? It's like, I didn't leave the Democrat Party, the Democratic Party left me. And it's like, this is what our government's saying. It's like, you're not helping us, so we're going to go look elsewhere. And then you're trying to punish us because we're looking elsewhere, It's a tragic situation. It really is.
So we said before, so the situation between Russia and Armenia was changing. Could you also feel that in the news, that like Russian propagandists, like famous Russian propagandists, were attacking Armenia?
Yeah, so that's good that you brought this up. The last 10 days, I would say, we've had an unprecedented amount of attention from the usual Russian talking heads, who, the vitriol that's usually directed towards Ukraine and Georgia. It started with Solovyov, this He's essentially the Russian Alex Jones, right? You know that nut job who always wears like the gray North
you mean
Korea suit
with the Mao suit? With the Mao suit?
Yeah, the guy, exactly. The guy who calls Europeans gay but has a mansion in Italy and cried on camera when it was seized during sanctions. But yes, that guy. So
you mean the guy where his son is also gay in London?
Yeah, exactly. So that guy, yeah. So he's been talking about potentially Russia should invade Yerevan. But Maria Zakharova, the spokeswoman of the foreign ministry, has been saying the most insane stuff. So the news obviously circled that the assault on Artsakh was entirely planned with the Russian peacekeepers. In fact, the Azeri Ministry of Defense, when they announced their so-called counterterrorism operation, which usually means they're going to go into villages and murder civilians, but they explicitly stated we are in contact with we have notified our Russian and Turkish partners. So the Russian Foreign Ministry denied that they were informed of this, and then went on to start blaming Armenia for its Western pivot, doing military exercises with the United States, with joining the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. It's like, we didn't do it, but also you deserve it, So that's an interesting one. Margarita Simonyan, who the chief editor of Russia Today, who we now call Masha Simonova. She doesn't deserve an Armenian name. She wants to be a Slav. She's more than welcome to be it. She's been making some, statements as usual, blaming Armenia. And the more interesting one to me is Dmitry Medvedev, the former president of Russia. He yesterday called for the assassination of Prime Minister Pashinyan, the democratically elected leader of this country, which to me is absolutely staggering. I do worry that this is a threat. This is not empty words. It's a genuine threat. I live just close by, hopefully not doxing myself and my family, but I live very close to the Prime Minister's house, and so he has to pass by my house on the way to the National Assembly, and I'm telling you, it's security everywhere, constantly. So it is a threat that is being taken seriously. So yeah, I mean the Russian position has become very overt. Russia is not only holding us back; it's actively working against us, and so. Armenia has no choice. It's a fight for survival at this point.
So how do you see the future? I mean, it's super hard to predict, but if you could give us an outcome, I mean, what's the current situation in Artsakh?
It's not looking good, unfortunately. There are indication that yeah. Well, actually, just check this as you were talking. According to sources in Artsakh, Stepanakert agreed to negotiations with Baku, and Azerbaijan has stopped firing. So it does seem that it's a capitulation. I don't want to be a predictor of doom. There's a UN Security Council resolution meeting tomorrow. It's the last hope for something serious. So the best case scenario would be remedial secession with the deployment of international peacekeepers and the ousting of the Russians. Nobody wants Russians here anymore. There was a sense of relief when they came that they're not the best, but at least the fighting will stop. We've now understood they are concentration camp guards. It's literally ridiculous. And so these negotiations, it's the Warsaw Ghetto Jews negotiating with the Wehrmacht. Like it's staggering that this is happening in 2023. And I don't use these words lightly. I'm conscious of the comparisons that I'm making, and I'm consciously making these comparisons. So the best case scenario is that some kind of remedial secession with whatever can be salvaged of Artsakh with international peacekeepers. The worst case scenario is the full-on ethnic cleansing of Artsakh. We will know in the coming hours, but that would mean 120,000 refugees coming into Armenia. It would mean instability. From what I've been told by some sources is that if that were to be the scenario, we are being offered, let's call it a consolation prize. And I hate to say this, I hate to look for a silver lining while people are suffering and are in bunkers right now, but we would be a la Georgia 2008. We would have billions of investment from the European Union, from the US. We would have actual security guarantees from the US. We'd be shutting down the Russian bases and expelling them. We'd be fully decoupling, and the EU would be sending a lot of money to maintain stability and democracy within Armenia, but that would come at the expense of all of Artsakh. So I really don't know. I don't like making predictions. I've learned that they almost never come true. something within those two extremes, those parameters. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. The situation changes every minute.
So yeah, let's hope the best. I mean, what shall we say now? We try to stay updated from you if it's possible. We're going to share the video as soon as possible.
Please.
And if there are any questions, people can ask you or ask. So that's everything what we can do for now, I would say.
Just raise awareness. To everybody watching this, tweet about it, share on Facebook, and hold your MEPs accountable, hold your parliamentarians accountable, hold your representative accountable. Any Western power who's been shouting never again since World War II is watching this happen again. They watched it happen in Srebrenica until it took American jets to put an end to it. I don't know what it's going to take here, but if we're a genuine society that has moved past genocide, it's time to show it now.
Yeah, I remember from the last video we did on Christmas, we said the attack on the liberty on one is the attack on the liberty of all. So yeah. I would finish this video with that. So let's finish and have a good day.
Yeah. Thanks, Andreas.